Let me walk you through our big project from last year. Some shelves in the niche in a hallway where we store our books and games, and then a huge wall filled with shelves from floor to the ceiling in our schoolroom. So, in the schoolroom, we added two kinds of shelves, the floor shelves and the wall shelves. The floor shelves are a slightly different design than the wall shelves. All of this inspiration came from some YouTube videos which I have linked below. These are some of the things you will need for this project: sandpaper, paintbrush for adding a coat of poly in the end and staining, mask to protect the children from the inhaling some of the fumes, floor flanges, wood stain, polyurethane, galvanized tube straps, wall anchors. You have to make sure that you get the heavy duty ones. We had some bad experiences, so you want to pick the one which has the highest weight limit and not some cheap one. The galvanized pipes, the floor flanges, and end caps. This is for the brackets, and you can choose to use some other kind of bracket, but we wanted the industrial look, so we chose these.
And it's battery. Wait, what?
The next thing we did is we brainstormed together to come up with a final design for the room. I taught my son how to make a plan on paper, and basically he ended up making a big list of all the items we need and all the measurements in of the different shelves on the wall, on the floor, everywhere. And we had a final list with which we went to the hardware store and picked up our supplies. This took a long time. You have to keep in mind that if you're doing a project like this with the children, you will need to allot 4 times the time that you would need if you were doing it yourself. So this entire project ended up taking an entire month. And that was fine because the children learned a lot. I went to the store to pick up the lumber. The kids had to figure out a lot of math. What would be the size of the shelf? What would be the length we would pick, which would make sure that we get the most out of we waste the least amount of wood and also get the most cost effective option. So they had to figure that out, and we talked about multiple options and spent a lot of time in the store. It was not just done in one trip, we had to make several trips. They also had to multiply the amount of items we needed for one shelf by all the shelves we needed. So it's like the floor flanges and the pipes, everything had to be multiplied by the number of shelves they needed. So they did learn a lot of math in all of this. Once we got the wood at home, we started sanding. And the sanding itself took more than a week because it was a total of 17 wood planks that had to be sanded. And my eldest actually sanded all of them single-handedly. He really enjoyed this work, even though it was really time and labor intensive, but he seemed to have fun with it. So he did it little by little and took his own time to do it. My younger one was just, around the corner and assisting his brother whenever he could. This part of the project really built that grit in my children because they knew how slow and how slow the process is, how tedious it gets, and how you have to be patient, and it taught them the value of hard work for sure. So this was slow work, and we felt like the project is like kind of stalling, and it is going nowhere at some point. And we did add a lot of shelves, so this was a huge project, so it was kind of expected. And we did put it away every now and then whenever we felt overwhelmed by the sheer size of the project. So be prepared to do that if you take up something like this, and be okay with the messes it's going to make, because it will make a lot of mess. It demonstrated to the kids how we want to give it a distressed look, because we wanted that beat up old rustic industrial look. So this was a great activity for my youngest because he added the distress effect on each of the planks, and he really had a lot of fun doing it because it was just basically beating it up and, scratching it and poking it with nails and all kinds of things. So while my eldest was sanding them, my youngest was giving the distressed look. And after that, he was the one who was wiping it with a wet towel and getting it ready for the staining, which was mostly done by me. For the staining, you want to keep in mind that you should use less is more, basically, as they say in the world of woodworking, that do not overstain them. Use a little bit and then spread it as much as you can. And it's better to use an old sock or a piece of cloth instead of a brush, because with a brush you end up overstaining the wood. I chose a nice dark walnut color for the shelves, and it ended up looking really nice. Even though I was careful about not overstaining them, it still had a nice dark rich color. While I was doing this, there were times when my kids wanted to do the staining, so they did end up staining a couple of planks with me. After the staining was done, we had to wait for them to dry, and this is an important step, because the wood videos that I was following did not highlight this, but I will make sure that I add all the things that I learned in this process. Whenever you stain the wood, do not rush to add the coat of poly. I made that mistake with a couple of planks, and luckily they have been used in a way that it's not very obvious. But basically, you want to let it dry for more than 24 hours. Once it is really completely dry, then go ahead and add a coat of poly, because otherwise the stain gets lifted up and it becomes a very, very bad color. It just does not look nice. So you don't want to make that mistake. So once these were dried up, we added the coat of poly, and again, that was mostly done by me. They just did one plank. The next step was adding the pipes, getting the pipes and the flanges and everything ready, which was going to be used as the brackets to hold them together. You can choose to put a different kind of support for your shelves. There's a lot of items available in the market, but we wanted that industrial look, so we got these galvanized pipes. Actually, we got two kinds of pipes. Some were galvanized and some were not galvanized. And if I were to do it again, I would only opt for the galvanized ones, because the ones which are not galvanized, they do need a coat of any kind of spray paint or something. And I did have to go ahead and spray paint them. I did this because not just because of the to avoid rusting, but also because I wanted that look. But it ended up being a lot of work, so I wouldn't recommend that, because the end result is pretty much similar. So it's not something that is worth adding. Now, once they were spray painted and dried up, my son started assembling the floor shelves together, and the floor shelves were completely done by him. If you see the video that I have linked down below, you can see how these shelves can be put together. So you basically connect the pipe to the flange, and then the flange can be lined up in the center of the shelf, and you can make markings and then use a drill bit to make holes, and then basically screw it in together using heavy duty wood screws. My son pretty much handled this on his own. Watching the video really helps. Now, the other thing I observed is they learn a lot of small things. Just watch him here.
For if it goes any beyond, it won't just start breaking the wood inward. It'll just stop right there, even if you spin it. It won't bring itself more in.
So why? क्या? इसके लिए वो wide है? It's wider from the top.
Usually there is this kind of ridges up here, and these kind of these kind of ones are different than this.
Huh?
Yeah, these two are for this is just for grip actually. Okay, this one is for going in and just stopping there if it until it goes there. Okay, because sometimes it will go too deep, over deep, right? Unlike other screws.
Okay. Maybe.
Yes.
So it was fascinating to watch him learn and, figure out things. Both of them, in fact, observe and learn about things through this entire experience. So it ended up being really worth the effort. We did have to move some of the shelves in the classroom and assemble them there because it was getting harder to move it, and it was a carpeted area, so there was less chances of scratching the wood floor. The other thing is you can add caster wheels under the shelf to give it, to be to help you move it around the house. We skipped that step because we started with a budget. I wanted them to learn about, budgeting and stuff like that. So, that was a decision that they made, that they want to reduce the cost by taking those things out. This is the shelf that was used earlier in my classroom to store the Montessori materials, and you can see how much better these shelves work to store, and it helps the child see the materials more clearly.
Our broken bit. Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, good.
How are you?
Walaikum assalam.
How are you?
Good.
How's your brother?
Good. Yeah, I'm good.
Have you guys prayed Asr?
Yeah, we did.
How are you guys going to do sujood?
Like this. And we did sujood 4, 8, 12 times. Because we did.
Yeah, but I did that too.
Yeah, but you didn't do the shells. But you just did this one. White.
Yes.
Huh? What? Do you have a brother?
No, your brother is my brother.
After this, we started working on the wall shelves. Unfortunately for the wall shelves, we followed the video, which basically explained that you have to connect the brackets, basically, which is the pipe with the flange, and then line up the flange on the wood shelf and add the tube straps on it to fix it. This was done by my son. He connected every single, he made every single shelf ready based on that video. And it turned out to be a huge mistake because this is not the right step. Once you do this, it's impossible to fix that floor flange on the wall, and some of the holes that will help you fix it on the wall are not accessible if you connect it this way. So unfortunately for us, we did not have this idea, and we went ahead and did all the shelves. In fact, my son did all the shelves.
That's fine, you. Sorry again. Sorry again. And one more sorry. Sorry. What
Ooh.
happened there? Sorry again.
So basically, all of that effort was like a wasted effort. All of these shelves which were ready to go on the wall had to be unscrewed. But here's what you can do instead. You can go ahead and make the markings on the wood shelf where the tube straps connect to it. Arrange the pipe and the flange and the end caps and the tube straps the way you would want it to fit on the shelf. And go ahead and mark those and pre-drill the holes where the screws will go. The pre-drilling helps get the screws in more easily, because once the shelf is on the wall, it's a lot harder to work with it. Now go ahead and add the wall anchors on the wall where the flanges are going to fit. You can take your floor flange and make 4 markings for the 4 holes and check if there's a stud. If there is a stud, you will be using the wood screws. And if it's the drywall, then you can add the wall anchors. Once you do this step, go ahead and connect the floor flange on the wall using the screws. Once it's firmly affixed, you can thread in your pipe along with the end cap. After you're done putting 2 support beams like this, you can add your wood shelf directly on top of it. Make sure that the pre-drilled holes that you made are on the underside. Now feel it with your finger and connect the tube strap right on top of it and thread in the wood screws with your hand, the way my son is doing it here.
Oh my.
This will help you use the drill, because you know the angle at which you will be doing this gets a little bit difficult to manage. So this slight threading in really helps get the screws all the way in
Don't do that ever.
without having, without dropping it again and again.
So now I need the drill.
Now, once you thread it in like that, you can use a drill and you should easily be able to, put it in. This step is slightly difficult for a child to do, and my son really insisted that he wanted to do it, but it's something best done by an adult. What this step does is it fixes the shelf on the support beam. This way it does not move and it becomes more stable. The tube straps, make sure that the sizes of the tube straps, the pipe and the floor flange are all compatible when you go and shop at the hardware store. So that was it. That was the last step. And once all of this is done, you can go ahead and use the wall shelves and the floor shelves in different ways. In the niche where we were, where we added the shelves, we basically did the same thing as we did on the wall. Basically, we made the wall shelves, and there we store our books, games, and some of the extra supplies that we take it out when we have company. Apart from that, in our schoolroom, the floor shelves are slightly deeper than the wall shelves. So the floor shelves are used to store their Montessori materials and other hands-on materials so that they are accessible to the children. We also have an art display area, which is made using curtain rod. And I will be making another video to show how that can be done. It's really easy. And the wall shelves basically display their projects and whatever they make, they can put it on top of it. I also use it to store our microscope and the teaching stuff, like my supplies, basically like a laminator, paper cutter, and those kind of things which we use infrequently. I hope this video was helpful, and I hope this inspires you to do something fun in your schoolroom with the children. Just make sure that you have plenty of time and you're not rushing them. Even if you do a project like this, it's not impossible. We did this in the dead of winter, but you can choose to do it in summer or spring, which would make it a slightly more comfortable experience. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel and share it with your friends. Thank you for watching.